So I want to just say this to you. There's a tipping point sometimes when we're in the process of transformation. I have this quote: if you do the work will do you. Never ever give up, no matter how bleak it may appear. If you can. Hello everybody, and thank you for joining me on 8 I Am Maggie. And I am so grateful for your support here on my channel as we are moving and shaking and growing and climbing up the ladder of success. And so, as you know, we've had some very new advances here on 8 I Am Maggie. And we have Ben Z. Darling and his team helping me to improve on my videos with Brand My Tube. So when you do get a chance, step on over and see what you can see on Brand My Tube with Ben Z. Darling. Okay, so we are going to get back to what we've been doing. We have been doing so everything we're doing here is to positively uplift you. We are working on our dreams, goals, visions, purposes, acts of service. We want to bring that out into the world. We are not here to play. We are here to shine in the most godly, beautiful, magnetic ways, in ways that are higher order values that lift the world up. And so part of the way that we do that is these beautiful readings and these beautiful positive affirmations and meditations. I mean, we're going to be doing a lot of wonderful things here. So if you want to watch what transformation looks like in business, please keep coming back to my channel and supporting me. I am in a big process of learning to give the gift that God placed in me to the world. So loving life, loving you. Okay, we are doing the complete works of Florence Shinn, and we are now in her book, Casting the Burden. Okay, now right now, this is a powerful message with a lot that's transpiring around the world. Let us learn to cast the burden. And what's interesting too is even if you are not novice, you're expert and you know so much, it is always good to repeat, repetition to flex those spiritual muscles so that when you get hit by the storms of life, you are holding that vibrational frequency and you are in peace. All right, may you be in peace. Okay, so casting the burden. Oh, and also if you are new to some of these thoughts, welcome, we love you. Just keep moving and shaking and bringing those positive vibes forward. You will see the change. Okay, casting the burden, impressing the subconscious. So what's really beautiful about this, the complete works, is as you're watching, as we go through each book, she's building and building and building and building and building, and it is like this big, beautiful, uplifting energy that gives you that fortitude and that backbone to walk through the marathons of life. So we're building here, casting the burden, impressing the subconscious. When man knows his own powers and the workings of his mind, his great desire is to find an easy and quick way to impress the subconscious with good. For simply an intellectual knowledge of the truth is not bringing results. Okay, so that's the concept. Like, you could imagine how to start an IV, like how a nurse will start an IV. But it's not until you actually poke yourself or you practice on an orange or you do it on another person successfully do you actually have the applied knowledge. Now, Renee Garcia has a beautiful quote. She says, knowledge without application is merely entertainment. We are not here to just, okay, entertainment is fun because it can uplift us and it's a different form of learning. But we are not here to just sit back, hear these principles and not take action. We are here to work on it, take the action, and also perfect what it is that perfect our mind so that our mind is staying in the good frequency. Perfect our hearts so our hearts are holding that love energy. So, okay, here we go. In my own case, I found the easiest way is in casting the burden. A metaphysician once explained it in this summer. He said, The only thing which gives anything weight in nature is the law of gravitation. And if a boulder could be taken high above the planet, there would be no weight in that boulder. And that is what Jesus Christ meant when he said, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." So did you get that? She's talking about a boulder. The only thing that gives it weight is gravitation, but if you take it out into outer space, it becomes weightless. And that is what Jesus is saying. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. Jesus can make these things easy. What was really perplexing you and holding you in bondage, he can free you. Okay. He had overcome the world vibration and functioned in the fourth dimensional realm, where there is only perfection, completion, life, and joy. And he held that vibration. That's why when people knew that if they could just touch his garment, or if they could just be in his presence or catch a cast of his eyes, they knew they would heal, because he held this powerful vibrational field. So he said, "Come to me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." That is such comforting words. So we are also told in the 55th Psalm to cast thy burden upon the Lord. Many passages in the Bible state that the battle is God's, not man's, and that man is always to stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. And what happens when we stand still? We can actually hear God's voice. We can actually get instructions, divine instructions, to help us through whatever it is that we are doing. This indicates that the superconscious mind, or Christ within, is the department which fights man's battles and relieves him of burdens. So we see, therefore, that man violates law if he carries a burden. And a burden is an adverse thought or condition, and this thought or condition has its roots in the subconscious. Now, I know this is really challenging, because when we get into the world is telling us all these things that usually bring you down. But that's when you need to cast your burdens upon God and have him carry the burden for you. You got to practice. Like, it takes time, because it also requires trust and faith. Okay, so we see, therefore, that man violates the law if he carries a burden, and a burden is an adverse thought or condition, and this thought or condition has its root in the subconscious. It seems almost impossible to make a headway directing the subconscious mind from the conscious or reasoning mind, as the reasoning mind, the intellect, blah, 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 is limited in its conception and filled with doubts and fear. Now, if you just sit quietly or you go about your day, you will start to notice that. You will start to know the reasoning mind just pops off and talks about everything, like, blah, 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 what's that person doing? Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, you ate too much of this, or you're getting fat, or you need to exercise, or blah, 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 blah. You start, and after a while, if you just have a little conversation with the reasoning mind and just say, "Hey, thank you for your help. Let's be in the stillness," you'll start to notice that chatter begins to slow down into the silence where you can actually hear God's voice. So, how scientific is it then to cast the burden upon the superconscious mind, or Christ within, where it is made light or dissolved into its native nothingness? Because our Christ mind knows exactly what to do. It's our reasoning intellect mind that has also been trained by worldly ways to sort of scatter in 3,000 directions. So since we've sort of been programmed this way, it takes effort to unprogram ourselves, but it's the best, most joyful effort ever, because when you start to see the results in what's mirrored back to you, beautiful, godly, magnificent, loving, joyful, compassionate, you start to understand the laws of the universe. It's a wonderful, wonderful life, and we are so blessed to live it. Okay, for example, case story. A woman in urgent need of money made light upon the Christ within, the superconscious, with the statement, I cast this burden of lack on Christ within, and I go free to have plenty. Well, I'll take that. That's for me. So the belief in lack was her burden, and as she cast it upon the superconscious with its belief of plenty, an avalanche of supply was the result. We read, the Christ in you, the hope of glory. So the Christ in you, the hope of glory. Another example, story. One of my students had been given a new piano, and there was no room in her studio for it until she had moved out the old one. She was in a state of perplexity. She wanted to keep the old piano, but knew of no place to send it. She became desperate as the new piano was to be sent immediately, and in fact was on its way. With no place to put it, she said it came to her to repeat, I cast my burden on the Christ within, and I go free. I cast my burden on the Christ within, and I go free. I cast my burden on the Christ within, and I go free. A few moments later, her phone rang, and a woman friend asked if she might rent her old piano, and it was moved out a few minutes before the new one arrived. Yay! I knew a woman whose burden was resentment. So these stories are important because you might be in the middle of something, and the story you can latch on in applied knowledge, so you're not just being entertained. You start to see the thread in the story, and you start to see that same thread in your life, and you can grasp on it and use the techniques. So I knew a woman whose burden was resentment. She said, I cast this burden of resentment on the Christ within, and I go free to be loving, harmonious, and happy. The almighty superconscious flooded the subconscious with love, and her whole life was changed. For years, resentment had held her in a state of torment and imprisoned her soul, the subconscious mind. So I want to just say this to you. There's a tipping point sometimes when we're in the process of transformation. I have this quote, if you do the work will do you. Never ever give up, no matter how bleak it may appear. If you continue to persist and you continue to make efforts and you continue to use that transfer of energy, there are so many laws in the universe that are going to come to have your back. God has your back, the universe has your back, and there will be a tipping point, and you will be flooded with love, light, harmony, whatever it is, financial abundance, support, whatever it is, it's on its way. You got to stand in the gap and believe this. So the statement should be made over and over, sometimes for hours at a time, silently or audibly with quietness but determination. I've often compared it to winding up a Victrola. We must wind ourselves up with spoken words. Isn't that interesting, Victrola? We haven't heard that in a long time because we haven't seen those in a while. I have noticed in casting the burden, after a little while, one seems to see clearly. It is impossible to have clear vision while in the throes of the carnal mind. Doubt and fear poison the mind, and the body and the imagination runs riot, attracting disaster and disease. So Dr. Joe Dispenza has a saying where he says, you're not going to heal the body in the same environment that you got it sick. So when you are working on healing, you need to cast that burden on and step into the new you that you are walking into and creating. You're not going to create in the same mindset that you created sickness. You're not going to create health. So here we go. So in steadily repeating the affirmation. Are you ready? I cast this burden on the Christ within and go free. The vision clears, and with a feeling of relief, and sooner or later comes the manifestation of good, be it health, happiness, or supply. So did you get that? Let's get that one more time. I want you to open up your hearts and welcome in the angels who are ever here to help us. Open your hearts. Let's cast our burdens together. Here we go. I cast this burden on the Christ within and I go free. My vision is clear. I have a feeling of relief. And the manifestation of my good health, happiness, and supply is now. One of my students once asked me to explain the darkness before the dawn. I referred in a preceding chapter to the fact that often before the big demonstration, everything seems to go wrong. Yes, you see that a lot. And deep depression clouds the consciousness. It means that out of subconscious rises the doubts and the fears of the ages. These old derelicts of the subconscious rise to the surface to be put out. In Jesus' name, out. So it is then the man should clap his cymbals like Jehoshaphat and give thanks that he is saved, even though he seems surrounded by the enemy. And the enemy could be the situation of lack or disease. The student continued, how long must one remain in the dark? And I replied, until one can see in the dark, and casting the burdens enables one to see in the dark. Did you catch that? That's a big tool. Casting our burden allows us to see in the darkness. So when we do cast our burden and we are in that stillness and we're praying to God and we're asking for answers, we begin to see in the darkness. We begin to have the answers. We begin to have the way out. We begin to have the clues, everything. Okay, so in order to impress the subconscious, active faith is always essential. That's another big tip. Active faith is always essential. So faith without works is dead. And in these chapters, I have endeavored to bring out this point. So let's complete this video on that. Faith without works is dead. Let us work. Let's just summon all that we can within ourselves to have this great, bold faith to walk forward in the directions of our dreams, goals, visions, purposes, and acts of service. Let's also continue to realize that we are going to clap our cymbals, and we are going to realize that if we are in some type of dark night, whether it's financial challenges, kid duties, complexity at work, we are going to know that we are going to be in that darkness, but we are going to be able to see in the darkness because we have cast our burdens, and this has enabled us to have vision. And we are also going to be working on this beautiful affirmation. I cast my burdens on the Christ within and go free. I cast my burden on the Christ within and I go free. I cast my burden on the Christ within and I go free. So I would love to hear in the comments, what are you casting? What burden are you casting on Christ or the Christ within? And what affirmation, how is this affirmation working for you? I want to hear what you're up to, how this reading affected you, or what was your favorite part or favorite story. And subscribe, follow me, subscribe, and hit like. And thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate you here at 8 I Am Maggie and branding my tube with Benzie Darling and his team. All right, thank you so much, and may you be at peace.